Hello, I'm going to be talking about how the things I learned in this 1302 English class. Okay, so one of the things I learned, well, at first when we started the course, I thought it was going to be a little bit challenging because our professor told us right away about a research paper that we're going to work on throughout the semester, and I automatically thought to myself, like, this is going to be hard because my 1301 English class was very challenging. I had to do like a research paper, 6 to 8 pages every week, and I said this is gonna be the same. Well, no, not at all. The good thing was that yes, we took a lot of time working on this research paper, but it was only one research paper. You built on it time by time, right? You had due dates and it was a process, step by step. You didn't just the good thing about my professor in this English class was that she assigned the research paper and gave you instructions on what to turn in, when to turn it in, how to start, like just the whole process. And that helped me a lot because in my other English class last semester, I had a hard time working on my research papers because of the same thing that the professor did not give instructions. She was just like, "Oh, you guys are working on a research paper. You have to do it. You have a 1 week to do it." But they never really tell you. The professors really never tell you what to do, or how to do it, or what they're expecting. Nothing. So my the first thing I'm going to talk about is the research process, uh, which is what I was trying to explain earlier. Okay, so this semester, Bonnie helped us go through it step by step, and the good thing is that she did not make us cram it all up in like a week or something. Like we just worked on it throughout the semester. She gave us time, of course, and many examples, um, as in how she wanted it to be done. The first thing she did was go up with every one of us, like each and every one of us in the class, and she told us like, "Oh, what are your options for your research question?" And I was really nervous. Like I said, I thought to myself like, I don't have enough time to like think about it, or I just have to come up with one and I can't change it. She was like, "No, like it's okay, just have your options and then just think about what you want to write about and like take your time." She wasn't really pressuring us. She was just trying to help, and she helped me like come up with very good question for my research paper. And so yeah, she helped us with that. Once we came up with the question, we started doing the working on the process for getting our secondary sources, which this concept was new to me. Like this is the first time I heard about it. It's the first time a professor helped me um, work, help me get it done or work this way. So the first thing I'm gonna show you is my first crap sheet, which the thing you had to do this was my first one, second, third, and fourth. So the thing basically you had to just over the weekend she assigned us like um take time to look for secondary sources and analyze them, based on your research question, and then gather them up, bring them to class, and then she helped us look through them and then do these crap sheets, which were very, very helpful because there's a set of questions for each crap sheet, and you had to do one for each secondary source you found, right? So Most of us had four or more, but not less than four. And we just answered basic questions, but were very helpful in the moment and in the future too, as we're trying to work on our research papers. Because once you wanted to start doing your research, you already had a um like an idea of what you were gonna talk about, what how you got to know. Basically, you just got to know more about your secondary sources, right? Which is something we don't usually do in English classes. You just pick a secondary source, you don't even read it most of the time, you don't even know what it's talking about, who wrote it, if it's credible or not. You just go with the flow, right? So this was really helpful. And uh, that's that's how it worked. And I applied it by doing my crap sheets for each and every one of my secondary sources. It was challenging because, as I said, it was my first time doing this, and I wasn't sure how to do it. I wasn't sure what, like, if my teacher was gonna be super strict about it or very picky. But no, no, not at all. Like, she really helped me a lot, and all my classmates, I'm pretty sure. And I overcame that challenge because once I started doing my first crap sheet, then the second, third, fourth, you got used to it, and then it went like super fast. You just um got used to the work. Like, it's not even work, right? But it's the process for getting to know more about your secondary sources. Impact it had on my writing. Well, as I said, also in the future, it helped me write my research paper without even having to think about it. Like, I already knew what I was gonna write. I already knew what my secondary sources were talking about, just because of these crap sheets. So that's why I try to point out how helpful they were for me, because of course they helped me in the moment, and then more, of course, as I was trying to write my research paper. I'm sorry. Okay, so now I'm gonna talk about integrating secondary sources and writing with authority. Um, okay, so this is my research paper. Give me a second. This is my research paper, and I was writing it, and one day my professor asked for a volunteer, like, who wanted to show the research paper, so that she can put it up in the projector and help that person correct it or start it or whatever they needed help with, right? So I volunteered because I didn't feel sure about it. I thought I was like not doing it right, because that's mostly like how my last professors or past professors have made me feel about my research paper, right? Like, they're never right. Like, they always have something missing, and all those things. So she told me, and this really helped my concept of research papers and how to write them, and how, like, their purpose changed a lot, because I never thought, like, I personally never thought you could, like, not agree with your secondary sources. I thought you always had to, like, oh, well, someone wrote this and this person should know a lot about the the topic, right? So they're automatically correct. Like, always you have to agree, right? Well, no, that wasn't true. My professor told me that you can either agree or disagree, and disagreeing is never wrong. There's nothing wrong with disagreeing. You just don't think like them, even though you're using one of their sources, right? The person you disagree with, or people, the authors. I'm sorry. And so when I started to write about my secondary source discussion, right? As you can see here, mm, mm, I was putting quotes right from my four secondary sources. So here I put aided greatly by propaganda genius Goebbels. Hitler was able to present an image of himself as a superhuman, even godlike figure. So I put Hitler got professional help from a propaganda genius to make Germans picture him as a perfect leader who apparently had no bad intentions. That wasn't the part I was looking for, sorry. Mm, okay. Um, I'll skip it because I can't find it. But she told me, my professor told me that if you mention what they're saying, like quote it, right? And then at the end of each quote, you can just say, yes, what whoever wrote this is credible or whatever. Like I agree or disagree, and then say why you agree or why you disagree, and that makes your research paper so much better, and it it gives you authority. So when people are reading your research paper now, um, instead of going with what your secondary sources said, what they think, they don't think, now they're gonna go with what you said, and if you believe in them or not, and that's how you have authority over your secondary sources. Um, this is my okay. So going back to my research process, I forgot to add this. This is my the site, the website I created, which is since my research paper was how did Hitler convince Germans to act the way they did, and when I was writing my research paper, I realized that there were many similarities between Trump and Hitler, so I made a whole paragraph out of that, explaining that, and I decided to analyze. I included two videos, one of Trump giving a speech of how he wanted to make America great again, and then one of Hitler talking about how he wanted to make Germany great again. And I chose to analyze them, of course, in my research paper. But this blog, the website was created to, it was my project. It was created so that my classmates will be able to look at these two videos, and they can analyze, find similarities and differences between these two videos, which was what I did in my research paper. But since not all of my peers read it, that's why I made this website, right? And this is my YouTube video, which was assigned to us as well, where I talk about my research. It's practically like what I researched, um, what I found, right? So here I talk about um, di- uh, no similarities between Adolf Hitler, which was Germany's leader in the time of the World War II, and Donald Trump, which is the U.S. current president. Mm, these this is a design and test worksheet data, which is this also helped us look for oh this was for finding gaps in our secondary sources. So we filled this. There are questions and we answer them. So the I personally also thought there at first that they would not be like nothing wrong with my secondary sources since I believe they were credible, right? But there was actually several things wrong with them, and which I had to look for was also challenging, but it helped me realize that research papers aren't supposed to just, when you're writing them, of course, you're not supposed to just agree all the time with your secondary sources. You can disagree as well. Even if they're talking about the same thing, you find the gaps, you talk about it, you make it, you have authority over your secondary sources, as I mentioned right now. This was also helpful for our research paper. Mm, problem solution. This was for our documents and analysis of them. And this is this is I'm sorry. Uh comparison. This was the first part of before doing the crap sheets. It's like it was like a practice to just start comparing them and contrasting like what the your four research I mean sorry your four secondary sources and finding gaps as well, but first mainly it was just to compare and contrast and then work on the crap sheets. And the third and final thing we're going to talk about is the peer feedback process, which um, also made me uh, have a more it made me open my eyes because I also never got to do this. I did thought about it in my past classes, but uh, I never had a professor who had actually changed this perspective about like what what peer feedback process is, right? They all just do the same thing, always trying trying to just the teachers um typical teachers just make the students exchange papers and have the peers corrected. Yes, but that how is that gonna help? I personally do not like this method of peer responses or whatever they call it because you are practically reading most of your peers research papers. You don't even have a clue or background information of how they did their research, right? What they did it on, what they wrote. Like you're just straight up like you get the paper, you just read it, and sometimes you don't even understand what it's saying because it's not your research paper. You're not supposed to understand if you're just reading it for the first time. So you get the paper and you're asked to give a response, a feedback for your peers. So you sometimes because I've done this in my other English classes. You don't even know what to write. You don't even know what they're writing about. You just make up stuff. And how that's sad, because how is that going to help your peers correct their mistakes if you're not even being honest about it, because you can't be. Like, you don't even, first of all, sometimes they don't even give you enough time to read it. You just have to make up something just to give feedback. Like, that's not help for me. Um and I'm guessing it's not for others as well. So in this class, my 1302 class, instead you were asked to analyze and review your own paper first, which is not hard to do because you wrote it, you know the process, you know the topic, you know everything. It's your own paper. Then you tell your peers and your professor what you want them to give you feedback on, and then you fix it based on their feedback. So, okay, an example is here. Our professor asked us to go in and with the whenever we were done analyzing, right? Here we were asked to write what we wanted feedback on. So I wanted feedback on my introduction. I wrote that I wanted feedback on my introduction, why I wanted the feedback, why no, I'm sorry, what I had done to try to correct it. And your peers had to go in to your research paper, look for your name, right? Just read what you asked for them to give you feedback on. This is my peer, Jonathan Cruz. He wrote what he thought my introduction should look like. The other example here, I wanted help on how to fix my discussion of my problem, and how I had tried to fix it as well. So my professor went in and she responded. She told me what I needed to fix and how I could fix it. So I went in, I fixed it. And then the last part, it was just two things you wanted your peers to fix, two parts of your research paper, and one for your professor. So in total, it was three corrections or feedback for your research paper. The last one I wrote was I needed help with my conclusion. I didn't know if it was correctly written or what, if I should add something or not. So my peer, Mabel, went in to my research paper. She wrote my request for my feedback and she responded. Once we were done with that process of once each of us wrote what we needed or wanted feedback on, then our peers would respond, and then we would go back again and just fix our problems with the help of the feedback our peers and our professors had given us. And so the feedback process, that's how it worked. Just like just as I showed you from my research paper, that we wrote requests for feedback and we got feedback from our peers and professor. I applied it because I personally had to give my peers feedback too. So we all had to give feedback to each other. Challenging and how I overcame. It was also challenging because, of course, I had never done this type of peer feedback, but I really, really loved it. It helped me a lot. It was straight to the point. You ask for help in a problem or whatever you wanted to fix in your research paper. You got the help. You went in and fixed it, and that's it. There was no lying. There was no nothing. It was very, very practical and very helpful as well. And the impact it had on my writing, well, I at the end, this was the last thing we did with the research paper. It was correcting it, going in and fixing it, right? So it had an impact because what I thought I had wrote was like right. Maybe some of my peers didn't, and they suggested things. So I went in. I looked at others' opinions. I heard other opinions, and I changed my. I worked on changing my research paper. Not a lot. It wasn't a big difference. It was just small things, but at the end, it was very helpful, and it impacted my research paper because it turned out to be very well written. Um, because obviously you always, I mean, opinions are never bad. You always need them. So yeah, that's that's it. Thank you for hearing this.